It was the classic Bradford, which was that week 2 they were like, Sam Bradford hurt his knee a little bit. Oh no, sorry, he's out for the season.
Done.
Yeah,
the next
it's
day,
it's
he's
always
never
hurt.
playing again.
We're talking about personnel decisions that have shaped the modern NFL. I'm Chris Ryan. This is Danny Kelly, Kevin Clark, and Robert Mays. Kevin, tell me about the trade.
Well, I don't call it the trade. Robert Mays just said, I remember where I was when the trade happened.
The trade we were about to talk about. I feel like it was implied.
So a lot of the things we're talking about are in a vacuum. Okay,
Yeah.
The Jaguars didn't maximize their talent because they didn't get Patrick Mahomes. The Rams got good because Sean McVay was hired. The Sam Bradford, Nick Foles trade changed everything. There's really not a team that wasn't impacted in some way. The Eagles won the Super Bowl because of it. The Minneapolis Miracle happened because of it.
It was in the throes of free agency.
Sam Bradford for Nick Foles. Sam Bradford going to Philadelphia, Nick Foles going to St. Louis at that point. Now, there's a couple of things we need to understand. Number one is that Case Keenum was signed the next day to be the backup. Bradford is not good enough that the Eagles go to Carson Wentz. Okay, that's the ripple effect there. The second round pick that went to St. Louis was packaged to Tennessee for Jared Goff. Okay, there we go. Sam Bradford gets traded after Teddy Bridgewater blows his ACL to Minneapolis. Minneapolis obviously becomes the home of Case Keenum, which obviously was freed up by that. But beyond that, you have the first round pick that came back in that trade becomes Derek Barnett, who fell on the strip sack.
I love this segment.
Yeah. And so everything, and obviously Nick Foles, that he goes back to St. Louis under Jeff Fisher. He asked for his release because of the Goff trade, of the Goff draft,
yeah.
excuse me.
And just general Jeff Fisher-ness, I would assume.
He
as
asked
well.
for his release because of the Jared Goff acquisition. He ends up back in Kansas City, where he plays under Andy Reid's offense. That familiarizes him with that system. The next year, he's a free agent. He signs for big money because he got an endorsement from Andy Reid with Andy Reid's disciple, Doug Peterson.
Yeah.
Wentz, Foles, Keenum, Bradford, Barnett, Minneapolis Miracle. It all happened because of March 13th, 2015.
Do you think that the league is starting to collectively wake up? I mean, this is also goes in conjunction with, obviously, the Russell Wilson and the Seahawks showed us the way forward of what you could do with your football team if you've got a quarterback on a cheaper deal. But that seems to have become a gospel over the last couple of years, especially with Goff and a couple of these other young quarterbacks, Wentz, where people are like, we can do all sorts of other stuff with our football team if we're not spending so much money. You've written about this so many times. Is this actually, like, outside of the ripple effects and the chain reactions it causes in all these teams that are in and around contention or not in the NFL, is it also the thing that sort of sweeps in this era of young quarterback, building around a young quarterback?
Yeah, because I think it was the high point of we've just got to figure out what's going on at quarterback and we're going to trade for a veteran. I think this was the end of something in a weird way because it was teams panicking and Chip Kelly, who was the most forward-thinking guy on the planet at that point, was like, I'm panicking. I need Sam Bradford.
Right.
And that we look at it now, 3 years later, and we're like, wow, that was such old world thinking because the league changed so much after that, because Carson Wentz, because Jared Goff, because these guys showed us the way of what was possible for a young quarterback. It would be a joke now, an absolute joke, to swap someone like Sam Bradford for someone like Nick Foles and have that be a marquee moment in free agency.
You wouldn't flip those guys, but we still see this backward Stone Age thinking in terms of quarterbacks all the time. Think about what happened this year with
Arizona signing Sam Bradford.
Arizona signing Sam Bradford, and the Browns traded for Tyrod Taylor before they drafted Baker Mayfield.
Right, that was a 5th round pick. That was a little bit.
But you're still paying him $18 million a year to be a guy that's going to sit there for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Teams do this all the time. The Bears are 2 years removed from signing Mike Glennon.
It's more low risk. It's more low risk. I mean, there was a 2nd round pick involved.
The 2nd round pick makes it a little bit different, yes.
And a 4th round pick.
Do you think we're going to see a moment, though, where a team, let's say, just for instance, the Giants or the Raiders, who I think are the 2 teams in contention for the number 1 pick, and let's say a quarterback ends up there, which I know there's not a guy that seems like the easy answer, but more often than not, that usually happens. So if one of those 2 teams see a quarterback there at number 1 and they have the number 1 pick, let's say the Giants cut Eli Manning or the Raiders just get rid of Derek Carr, do they feel the need to have another veteran there, or do they just roll with the guy they picked first overall? Because teams have been hesitant to do that.
Well, I mean, the Jets did it with Darnold,
McCown,
and Bridgewater.
But they signed those guys first.
Right.
Those guys were on the team.
So I wouldn't be surprised, if they followed that sort of playbook in terms of let's get a guy here and then we'll see how things go in training camp or whatever. It gives the rookies something to work for. You know, his job isn't necessarily guaranteed, whatever.
Is the $10-15 million for your stopgap 4-game quarterback worth the tiny bit of motivation it gives to the guy was the number 1 overall pick? You think he doesn't feel like he's going to play soon?
I think it's different. You know, in talking to people around the Browns, Baker Mayfield is a really good prospect, but he was just a little bit raw. So maybe you need a guy like Tyrod Taylor for the first couple weeks. I mean, they have the cap space. What's the point?
The cap space rolls over.
But should they? But in that case, should Tyrod have started all the games that he's healthy, and Baker should just be standing on the sideline learning terminology and timing?
I think that how it happened was okay. I think you have him in training camp. You could have got him a little more reps in training camp, but it's $18 million. You got to spend it. There's a salary cap for. Like,
I guess so.
One of the things that John Dorsey told me, which I thought was interesting, was the reason you sign a guy like Tyrod, the reason you sign a guy like Jarvis Landry, is because the moment you start showing that you are serious or trade for Jarvis Landry, the reason you do that is because you don't have to overpay for free agents.
Yes.
Because if you're an absolute tire fire, you're going to have to pay a tax of 10 to 20%.
The Browns are a really rare case, though. They're the exception to this. I'm okay with what they did. It's more the other teams that continue to do this, like in Arizona. It just feels like they're a team that doesn't need to do it.
I just think that the fact that it was, I mean, this was at the end of the day Les Snead, who is now considered a GM god, trading with Chip Kelly, who was at that point seen as like, you know, the only person who had solved football.
Yeah.
And they traded 2 pretty mediocre guys for each other.
What do you think is what's happened in Minnesota since this trade?
Yeah. So the Case Keenum thing came out of nowhere because Sam Bradford, again, Bradford and Keenum ended up on the same team. Bradford was Bradford. He had his knee thing, and then it was the classic Bradford, which was that week 2 they were like, Sam Bradford hurt his knee a little bit. Oh nope, sorry, he's out for the season.
Done.
Yeah,
it's always
never
hurt.
playing again.
It's never not hurt.
He
never
played
playing
amazing
again.
week 1.
There
too.
was that.
He was really good.
There's
He was, like,
always the
really
one
good.
Bradford game where you're like, is this guy Joe Montana? And then it's like, nope, he's not.
So Keenum comes in. He is really good. I mean, he's really good. He gets them, on the cusp of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then they go out and they give the first fully guaranteed multi-year contract in the history of football to a quarterback, $84 million for Kirk Cousins. And so that's another ripple effect. Without all of these things, NFL labor changes forever because this led to Kirk Cousins getting the most interesting contract in the history of the sport.
Can you chase the thread even farther and wonder whether or not, like, if Cousins' situation doesn't change and he goes to the Vikings, does Smith go to the Redskins? Does Mahomes wind up starting?
Yeah.
I mean,
this is the butterfly effect is unbelievable. It really we could spend an hour here just saying, okay, if this happened, this happened. I mean, it's endless.
What do you think, Danny, about like, what are the major lessons to take from a trade like this?
That's a good question because it seems almost just random. Like,
the
whole thing is just like chaos. Again, I kind of come back to the idea that I actually side with teams now because we've made fun of a few teams that have done this before, but I actually kind of like the idea of stockpiling quarterbacks, even if it costs your cap, because quarterbacks are the greatest trade chip in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I mean, we saw the Jets, they traded away Bridgewater. I can't remember what they got for it, but it wasn't insignificant.
3rd-round pick, wasn't it?
Yeah. So a 3rd-round pick is not insignificant. I mean, it's a chip that you can use to build to the future. Are you buying that kind of? Yeah.
It's only happened twice, though.
What?
Those getting a really nice trade chip for a quarterback like that, after this trade, obviously. But it's only happened with Sam Bradford, which required a catastrophic injury at a very strange time of the season, and with Teddy Bridgewater. It's happened twice. Every other time a team has thought they could do this, like in the Mike Glennon realm
what
of
about
things,
Alex
it's
Smith?
not worked. Oh, that's a different thing. You've had that quarterback forever. That wasn't part of your plan necessarily.
Oh, you're talking about
you didn't get them
signing a guy.
Yeah, not doing it together is what
Okay.
I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess the point is that the reason I think this is the most impactful personnel decision of the last 5 years is because almost anything that happens in modern football, you can just keep retracing back and say, well, if this hadn't happened, everything changes. Maybe Jeff Fisher's still employed.
Yeah, just Sean McVay is just playing Nintendo.